Hi, good morning, everyone. I am actually calling to you from Chicago, Illinois. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So I'm an art teacher. I work at a residential facility, and I work with Gen Z, who is a generation of young activists and environmentalists and artists. And I'm both awed by their ability to work with art as a medium for solar punk. We are at a very critical juncture in time right now where we have to go far and we have to go quickly. Right now, my air quality outside is terrible from the fires up in Canada. So this is a very real thing that's affecting us on the daily. And I understand that art may not be the engine that drives us forward, but we can be the solar sail. Artists have used their tools to change public opinion since the beginning of time. Photographers have helped to change the course of war. And it's something that solar punk is different because we're not reflecting this dystopian future that we're currently in. We are actively trying to build a better world. I've made a lot of solar punk art over the last couple of years, gotten a lot of different feedback from different communities, and I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone, but there's a lot of things that I've learned about what makes a successful solar punk piece versus what's just like a greenwashed aesthetic. Next slide, please. So solar punk art has to be able to do these three things. They need to be able to shift public opinion. And there's a couple of examples I'm going to give about how I've been able to do that and things that I've observed in my course as a professional artist. We also must be able to build for universal design. This is really important, that anything that we're creating at any level, whether it's systems or buildings or pieces of art, it has to be done with everybody in mind. So that's including like disabilities, it's including like the elderly, it's including people who maybe don't speak the language. And the third thing is solar punk art needs to be a bridge to communities. Next slide, please. So this is a piece that I made. Again, I live in America, so there's daily mass shootings, and it's become a very real part of our daily life and thinking about like the death industry and how things affect us. So one of the things that happens when you shift opinions is taking an industry that is capitalistic and toxic and has all of the sort of makings of why we're in this hellscape we're in now, and taking aim at it. And I actually did get some pushback for this. I had a lot of really angry morticians in my inbox afterwards. But there's a beauty that comes with looking for shifting the public mindset away from this disposable, single-use, individually centered system of consumption. So in America, the funeral industry is very, very expensive. They move very quickly. It's very predatory. Graves and headstones can cost thousands and thousands of dollars, which grieving families often don't even like have, or they feel pressured to perform immediately. And I know that a lot of other cultures are already doing sort of more natural burials. So this was something that I tapped into a lot of those communities. Like I know a lot of Jewish communities and Muslim communities don't use any like embalming, a lot of cremation, which again is very like carbon heavy, is not used. But again, this is barely legal in the States. I don't think I can find a green cemetery within, 500 miles of me. So I don't know what I'm going to do when my time comes, but this is what I want. This is what a lot of people want. And what happened after I posted this on like Reddit and a couple of other places is I had a shroud maker in New Zealand contact me and say that she was going to start using wildflower seeds in her shrouds because of images like this. And we talked about partnering with local local lawmakers to get more funding and research and public support behind these types of burials. So again, sort of one of the things I think artists have a duty to do is to take aim and use art as a tool and a weapon to shape public opinion. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So building logistically, yes. So one of the things that I really want to encourage all of us to do as we move forward is not just think in terms of like universal design, but can we build a world that's so interconnected that we can take things apart almost like Lego blocks? So if we're building like wind turbines and algae farms and geothermal power plants, can we make sure that things are connected across all spectrum? That's, I think, one of the biggest things of single-use waste that we're currently fighting. Even as an artist, I try to print things on recycle. I try and not use like the cellophane, and it's really hard. It's just not, the system is not set up this way. So when I designed this Barbie dream house, I talked to about 20 different disabled people and said, like, what would your Barbie dream house look like? What are the things that need to be inclusive for you? And there were things that I had never even considered. Things like using doorknobs that have the turn instead of the knob for people that maybe have mobility issues. Just designing it, just sketching it from the beginning and seeing it on paper that could someday be utilized in real life. Like, that's where the magic is. That's where the hope is, that if we can build it right from the beginning, and we can use our art as a blueprint for the makers, for the engineers, for the designers, and the programmers. Like, that's really where it comes from. So like, if you don't even need to really be an artist. I think a lot of my students are like, I can't even draw a stick figure. That's fine. Draw a stick figure, draw schematics. It's okay. Not everybody has to be an illustrator. But I think everyone is an artist at the very bottom. Like, we all as children created, and at some point that was beaten out of us and we stopped. But what if we didn't? Like, what if we tapped into that part of our imagination and we built the world that we imagined as children that we need now? Like, look outside. It's terrible out. We want the better future. This is what we're working for. So the Barbie dream house led to bigger discussions about disability access. And a lot of what I have learned is that people are so visual. I've written proposals at my job to try and get us away from using single-use plastic. We used to use 300 styrofoam plates a day. And it was like infuriating and exhausting. But I had to show people, like, there is a different way. And now we use and now we have a composting program. And one of the things that I had done was I had taken pictures of our building and I had photoshopped like native plants and gardens where before we just had dead lawns. Next slide, please. And there's something about taking what is here now instead of this sort of futuristic flying cars. Like, we're not there yet. I don't know if we're ever going to get there. But the one step before, that's where the magic really happens. So I had photoshopped these gardens all over our campus, and I had been told no for like 2 years. Like, no, you can't build a garden. No, we're just going to have our lawns. But after I had photoshopped it and resubmitted the proposal, I got a phone call within 20 minutes that was like, we can build this. So again, it was a lot of work, but part of the community building is like seeing what people want in the world. So this Repair Suburbia, this was another piece that I made like a while ago that I think got a lot more traction than I was maybe expecting. But this is actually, this is my block. My house isn't on here. It's actually not in view. But I live in a sort of suburban area, and I don't know if Prague has a lot of suburbs, but in America, the sprawl is very wide. And again, there's not a lot of walkable communities, but one of our goals is to like get back to our roots of community. So I had talked to my neighbors and had asked them like, hey, are you going to use pesticides on your lawn? Like, I'm trying to make mine more natural. And they were like, no, we're totally like wanting to get rid of like this sort of lawns that we currently have. And in America, we also, everything's very American from my perspective, I'm really sorry, but we also like fence off our front and back yards. And my neighbors and I had actually torn out our front fence posts and planted fruit trees. And And we had built a garden for the community that's very small. It's just a little herb garden. But anybody in our community who's cooking and wants to come over and snip some like sage or rosemary can, and they do. And it's very like, that's not very usual here. It's very strange. And I know that it's strange. And I know that we're probably like the weirdos on the block. But this is, I think, how you use your energies forward and like walk the walk. And so this is one of the pieces that a lot of people started talking to each other about, like, well, can we do that? And it's like, do we have an HOA? And so using, again, a visual to say like, hey, like maybe we don't have the flying cars and the skyscrapers with, forests on the top, but you do have a home in the suburbs, and you can add community gardens, and you can add solar panels, and you can like talk to your neighbors, and we can start rebuilding this system that has kept us so isolated for so long. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Okay. And then the next slide, please. So refusing dystopia. So again, this was another one. This is like the name of the talk is like refusing dystopia. So solar punk art bridges the gap between the city and the rural. And it's, again, if you're an artist, can you Photoshop bike lanes, and can you Photoshop or sketch like visual policies where visual powers where policies have failed? And this is something that, again, like we just had a very small local election, and I've already been knocking on my alderwoman's door saying like, hey, you promised us bike lanes. Like, when can we get started? And like, let me help you draft it up. And like, can we add murals and have the like community come out? Can we get the school kids during the summer to come out and build like a big solar punk mural in our local park? She, again, thinks I'm very strange, but she seems really open to it. So, and again, this building, this is my old apartment in a very densely packed area in Chicago that I lived in during the pandemic. And one of the things that happened is we don't really talk to our neighbors when you live in big apartment buildings. It's you sort of like mind your business. And one of the things that happened during COVID is like we started talking to each other, and we would leave baskets of like food for each other on the fire escape. People I'd never talked to. I'd lived above this family for like 8 years, never talked to them. And suddenly we're like lowering notes down on string, like, are you guys doing okay? Do you need anything? And I realized, like, what if apartment buildings could become these sort of like units? And we broke down these social barriers that, like, no, you're very individualistic. You stick to your own kind, you stick to your own side of the street. And what if like buildings themselves became almost like co-ops? And what would that look like? And could we take over the roof and build gardens? Could we add solar panels everywhere? Could we have a community like bike section? And that's sort of what we did. Our landlord didn't really know what we were doing until we had like already begun, which again is, we were hopeful that building these things together would propel us into the future. And it did. And I still actually keep in contact with the old neighbors that we had before. It's not a easy thing to do, but it is something that, as our world is crumbling and falling apart, we have a duty. We have a duty to try and stop this and reverse it. And I think we can. I think we can be magnificent. I see what my students do every day, and I know that when we talk about seed bombing, which is we take native wildflower seeds, and on field trips when I'm supposed to be taking them like to whatever, we roll down the windows and we throw wildflower seeds out the window into like abandoned parking lots and alleyways. And this is something that I've been doing for a couple of years, and like we're just now starting to see these sort of gardens grow, both literally and figuratively. And I think it's something that is beautiful and different, and it pushes against the narrative. And if I stopped and asked for permission every time I wanted to do something, nothing would ever get done. And so hope is a discipline. It's something that you have to practice. And it's something that I refuse to let climate doomerism win. The last time I had an interview with somebody at my work who was like, why should we do this? Like, if the world is doomed, why not just party? And I refused to accept that. And my youth refused to accept that. It's not fair. We were handed a bad deck. That doesn't mean that we get to like pass it on. And so as an artist, I am paying very close attention to what people are saying today and like what is needed. And I will be creating more art around like what we come up with here. Like, what is the future? I'm not going to get it right every time, and that's okay. And I think that's something else is we're allowed to make mistakes and we're allowed to figure out what works and what doesn't. And if we stopped every time that we hit a roadblock, like we would never get anywhere. So this is something that as we shape our culture, we're here at the beginning of history. Like, this is such an exciting place to be, as we are at the forefront of a new movement. And it's not a moment, it's a movement, like Hamilton says. So anyways, I think that's about what my time is at. But if there's any other questions or concerns, I have my information written down, and I would love to like partner with anybody who's working to build this world. I can give you the blueprints and the maps if you can build it. So thank you very much for your time.